I've lived in California now for many years, but at my heart, I'm still a small town girl from one of the tiniest towns in North Dakota. And if you're from the Midwest, you know a casserole is not called a casserole. It's called a hot dish. And the best hot dish of all, that is the tater tot hot dish. So if you're not familiar, let me break it down for you. The tater tot hot dish, it starts with ground beef. There's a bunch of cheese, cream of something soups on top of that, but it's topped off with an entire layer of tater tots. You might make a tater tot hot dish for your own family, you might, but more than likely you would probably make one for somebody else's family. Maybe someone who just had a new baby or lost a grandparent, or maybe someone, God forbid, who had a sick child. But I want to tell you about a time in my life where nobody brought me a tater tot hot dish. Rewind 7 years, I was at lunch with a dear friend, and he shared a super personal story with me about how his teenage daughter was cutting herself. And I had one of those moments, we've all had them, where you feel so awful for the other person, and at the same time, so glad that this is not in your life. Because what he was telling me sounded like the worst thing I could possibly imagine, a child who was harming herself. Fast forward 2 years from that lunch, my now 15-year-old son, my sweet-hearted, smart firstborn, suddenly despondent. He was in some kind of trouble. I didn't know what was going on, but he was in a lump on the floor of my family room, not moving, not talking, a million miles away. And I went to his room that night and confronted him, and he broke down, and he pulled up his sleeve to show me the methodical cuts that he had made the entire length of his forearm. And there I was, exactly where 2 years prior I thought would be the worst thing that could happen to a family. It was happening to mine. Now it was mine. What I didn't know in that moment was that things would get a lot harder from there. Fast forward 2 more months to a day that was possibly the worst day of my life. At this point, he was openly suicidal, depressed, and on this particular day, I thought he killed himself in our shower. There was a giant thud from upstairs, a locked door, my husband and I frantically trying to find that stupid little key that looks like it goes to a sardine can to open the bathroom. And there was chaos and confusion, and when we finally got the door open, he was unconscious on the floor of the shower and covered in blood. And I was sure he was dead. And I felt in that moment what a parent must feel when they lose a child. I don't want to keep you in suspense on any of this. On that day, he did not try to commit suicide. He had a reaction to some medications, and he passed out in the shower. And in the fall, he broke off his 2 front teeth, which is why there was so much blood. So it was bad. It was really bad. But he was alive. And in better news, he's 20 now, and he's doing really well. And in fact, it's with his permission that I share this story, a story that is obviously chiefly his, because he hopes it helps somebody. And he is a really terrific kid. The reason why I share this story was because at the time, I hardly told anyone. I was so up in my head about it all, but as a result, I was alone. I didn't have a lot of people to support me. And let's just say that at that time in my life, nobody was bringing me a tater tot hot dish. There were really 2 reasons for this. The first was me. It was all me. And it was that I was ashamed, and I'm ashamed to even admit that I was ashamed. And sure, part of it was that I didn't want people judging my kid. I didn't want them stigmatizing him or labeling him or putting him into a box. But the ugly underbelly of it all was, I didn't want people doing that to me. I didn't want people stigmatizing me. When my kids were younger and in elementary school, I used to send those bright orange crackers with them to school. They had the little layer of peanut butter in the middle, and they were delicious. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently they had trans fat in them. And one of the moms who volunteered in my son's room made a little comment to me one day about how I had sent a trans fat snack to school. So I was aware from an early point in my parenting career that I was being judged, sometimes on the basis of things like peanut butter crackers. But this idea of people knowing what was happening in my family, something as severe as depression, I was pretty sure that was going to be not just a sideways glance. that that was going to be a full-blown gossip situation. And in my head, it went something like, what is going on in that house? What's up with that family? What's the story with that mom? And I was signing up for none of that. I didn't want any of that. When the second reason I think that no one was bringing me a hot dish was because the very few people who knew what was going on in my family, I don't think they knew what to do with us either. And I don't blame them. It was really hard. I think on the one hand, they thought things would blow over in a couple of months. And on the other hand, I think they thought they were offering us privacy and space, and that those were the right things to do. But let's be real about it. If he had had a concussion or a broken leg or some kind of cancer, those hot dishes would have been lined up on my kitchen counter. And the fact of it was that he was in every bit as much danger as if he had a physical disease. He was. Things didn't blow over quickly. It wasn't a 2-month journey. It was more like a 2-year journey. And somewhere in the middle of that, I just hit a wall. I just hit the wall. I was in my best friend's minivan in the front seat, and I started to cry. And I told her, I can't do this anymore. And the words that tumbled out of my mouth were, I need a casserole. I just need somebody to bring me a casserole. Now, she's from California, so I had to do a little translating for her. I didn't know if she'd know what a hot dish was, but she was picking up what I was putting down. I don't know exactly what she did after that day, but she rallied the right people in the right way. And after that, there were phone calls and emails. There was food. I was so grateful. And probably most importantly, there was a connection to a woman whose sister had grown up with mental illness. And from her story, there was hope. This little tribe of people wrapped around me and my family, and they saved us. And that, in turn, helped to save my son. I'm convinced. The theme of this TEDx event is igniting connection. And when I heard that, I thought, yeah, let's do that. And let's not just do it halfway. Let's take this idea of connection and set it on fire. And let's burn down all of the old stigmas about mental illness. Let's spark curiosity and empathy and vulnerability, all of those things that true connections really require. When our country first went into the pandemic, I think one thing we got right from the beginning was understanding that first responders ensured the survival of the rest of us. And what did we do? We put special protections and support around them, and we made sure that they would be around if we eventually needed them. What I want you to think about today is parents. Parents are the first responders for a kid who's going through a mental health crisis. This idea about parents being a critical piece of our kids' wellness is a concept that I just think not a lot of people are talking about. And yes, for sure, kids need great therapists and they need great doctors. But let me tell you, a therapist is not the one who will go through your house and gather up every knife, razor blade, pencil sharpener to make sure that your kid doesn't cut himself. And a doctor is not the one who's going to sleep outside of your kid's door for weeks on end to make sure that your kid doesn't kill himself. Those are the jobs of parents. And it's a heavy lift, and they need support. I think everyone agrees being a kid right now, it might be harder than ever. But mental illness in kids does not mean that there isn't hope. In fact, I think maybe a natural up and down of mental health throughout our lives is a pretty normal part of life. But the hard part with kids, the dangerous part with kids, is they're old enough to feel all of the pain, but not old enough yet to have that arc of adulthood where you have the perspective that says things can get better. So we have to bridge that for them, and the best people to do that are their parents. And we have to support them. And there are things that we can do, and I have 3 ideas to share with you today, if you will. The first is, if you have a kid who's in trouble, ask for help. And I absolutely understand if you're feeling like, I don't want people to know. I don't want to be seen. Believe me, I get that. but we can't serve our kids well on our own. We do this job of parenting from a place of love, but we do our jobs better when we're surrounded by love. Number 2, if you know of someone who has a kid in this situation, do not stay politely silent. It may feel like you're honoring their privacy, but in actuality, you're facilitating their isolation. So ask them, how can I help you? And understand sometimes you have to ask more than once. And finally, number 3, if you think, no, I don't know of anyone who has a kid in this situation, I think you're wrong. I think people don't talk about it. I think they stay quiet. So what I ask you to do in those situations is just go deeper in your relationships. Ask, how are you really doing? How are your kids really doing? And when you get those real answers to those real questions, make the real connections. Some of this may seem a little bit daunting, and you may not feel like you know how to get started, but I have an idea for you. And it's topped with an entire layer of tater tots. So what I want you to do is Google that recipe, because I can't really remember the kind of soup that goes in it, and then set your oven to 350, just bake, deliver, start the conversation. I guarantee if you show up with food, you can't go wrong. I stand here with a good outcome to my story, where I have a kid who is alive and he's doing well. But I am keenly aware that many parents who share this story, they don't share this outcome. Mental health in kids can be fatal, which is why I'm asking you to please just be part of the solution, part of the support, and most importantly, part of the connection. Because if you do, you might, without exaggeration, with your hot dish in hand, you might help save a life. Thank you.